Next up, we have Elise and Rachel. Elise Davis is the head of mobile and connectivity at Facebook's Creative Shop, a global network of creative and strategic thinkers who collaborate with brands and agencies advertising on Facebook's family of apps and services. Her team focuses on connecting brands to people in meaningful ways and reimagining what's possible with mobile-first storytelling, AR, VR bots, branded content, and more. And next up, and with Elise, is Rachel Hofstetter, who's the CMO of Chatbooks. Rachel has led the Chatbooks marketing efforts to achieve hypergrowth with double and triple revenue growth years. Rachel was the CEO and co-founder of software startup Gesterly, which was acquired by Chatbooks in 2015. She's the recipient of the CMO of the Year Award from Utah Business 2020, the Growth Leadership Award from the Women Tech Council 2017, and a winner of the 2016 Utah Venture Entrepreneur Forum's Peak 100 Top 10 Entrepreneurs. So let's give it up for Elise and Rachel.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us and welcome to We're Always Wrong, a session from Facebook and Chatbooks. We're gonna go ahead and jump right into things. We've got a question for all of you. Imagine you're running an ad campaign. Do you know where your results are? That is the question that we're gonna be exploring today. And before we jump into that, we're gonna start with a couple brief introductions. My name is Elise Davis, and I'm the mobile and connectivity vertical lead at Facebook's Creative Shop. Creative Shop is a group of about 300 creative strategists and technologists around the world, and we work with the brands and agencies advertising across our platforms to imagine what's possible creatively and to connect brands and people in meaningful ways. And I am very excited to be co-presenting with Rachel Hofstetter, who is one of my very favorite people to work with and was recently named Utah's CMO of the Year. Thank you for joining us, Rachel.
Well, I'm thrilled to be presenting with Elise, who's very, very brilliant. And yes, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Chatbooks. We're a super easy photo book app, and we love great ad creative. Some of our ads have been named Ad Week's Ad of the Day. I think we've had 3 or 4 ads as the ad of the day. But we also care a lot about getting a great customer acquisition cost, a CAC, and having great direct response ads. And so that's one of the reasons beta typing has been such a really amazing unlock for us at Chatbooks, and we're so excited to share what happened with you today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right, so I want to get back to that question that we opened with, which is, you're running an ad campaign, do you know where your results are? And if you're like most brands, your results are here at the very end of a long and laborious process, after all of the strategic and creative work has been completed and after all of the production and media dollars have been spent. And at this point, the results are telling you whether or not your campaign worked. Did it change people's minds? Did it open people's wallets? And if it didn't work, it's pretty late in the game to make any significant changes to the campaign that you've just finished running. But what if you could find out if you were wrong earlier on in the process, before any of these other stages began? What if you could get results and audience input prior to starting any of your strategic or creative work and prior to spending any of those production and media budgets? Not only to improve the success of your campaign, but also as a way to test your way to big ideas. At
Elise, that would be amazing. I totally interrupted you, but I'm sold. I want that. That would be so amazing.
I love it. This is why you're on. This is why you're co-presenting, is because you're basically my hype person.
Yeah, it's amazing. So everybody should keep watching because it's that amazing.
Awesome. All right. So at Facebook, we tend to think of social media as the largest live feedback platforms in the world. So I come from an agency background. I have spent many hours, many days sitting behind a two-way mirror at in a conference room facility off in the suburbs, listening to people respond to scripts and, mood boards, in the middle of the afternoon on a Thursday. It's kind of an environment where you're looking at work in a vacuum. It's so far removed from how you would typically see work, when it's live kind of out in the wild. And we see social media as a way to get real-time feedback from billions of people as they respond to ideas in real time. And we also see this as an opportunity to let people in on the creative process. Essentially turning testing from creative evaluation at the very end of the creative development process to creative development, right? Where that's actually happening in the early stages before you get into some of the strategic and creative development. And the other benefit of working in this way is that it transforms your audience from, passive consumers to active participants who essentially co-author your brief or big idea. And we refer to this as beta typing, essentially testing early creative ideas using lightweight prototypes. For traditional campaigns, you're typically running a single concept, right? This is something that has been, vetted internally, it's been selected, it's fully produced, and that's the one idea that we're putting out into the world. When it comes to beta typing, we're throwing a variety of different concepts in very early stages out into the world to see how people respond to them. And we found that this approach does a few different things for brands. One, it reduces risks by testing multiple ideas prior to any of that production and media budget being spent. It rewards experimentation by, giving us space to test wild and kind of risky ideas alongside ideas that feel a little more safe and familiar to the brand. It also finds value in being wrong. For as much as we tend to know about the audiences that we're trying to reach, this acknowledges that customers' needs and wants and preferences are constantly changing, and we may not have the answer to what's going to resonate to them in this particular moment. And then last but certainly not least, we've found that this way of working, this kind of iterative approach to, testing and learning, your way to creative ideas, drives business outcomes, and that it drives a lower cost per ad recall, lower cost per action intent, and per conversion. So beta typing is made up of 4 key phases, starting with crafting your hypothesis and making sure that that question that we're trying to get an answer to is really clear up front. Next, we move into designing our assets and actually building out those lightweight prototypes in which we're going to test these concepts on the platform. Then we move into learning, right? This is where we're going to run the test and analyze the results. And then finally, you get to the adapt phase where you're either using those learnings to run another round of testing or turning them into a big idea that you're going to fully scale and launch to your entire audience. So we had an opportunity to pilot this way of working with Chatbooks, and Rachel's going to share how we used this beta typing test and learn approach to develop a business-changing idea in partnership with their audience of parents.
Thanks, Elise. Really excited to share this story with you. So when we started working with Facebook on this beta typing concept, we were running an ad that was a super solid performer, and it was a message around a super easy 5-minute photo book. We had lots of variations. We kind of had tested our way into the perfect optimized 5-minute photo book ad, and it performed. And it was a sales driver, but as any other creative person out there knows, it was good. It was doing its job. But it wasn't building an emotional connection. It wasn't building the brand. It wasn't taking us anywhere new. It was kind of boring, to be honest. And so we thought, hey, if we can do something that is as good as this or better while building the brand, while doing something exciting and new, that would be amazing. But what would it be? Could we do that?
I love that. That's the perfect intro to, what we were hoping to kind of solve with Chatbooks. Rachel, I'm curious if you could tell us, what were your assumptions going into testing? What did you expect the experience to be like?
Yeah. Well, honestly, Elise, I hoped it would work, but we had really optimized our way into a hole in retrospect. We had just taken one concept versus another concept, and fast and easy kept winning and kept winning and kept winning. So at this point, we were literally optimizing around, do we use a yellow vase or a green plant? Do we do 6 books in the stack or 7 books in the stack? And so we were getting all these incremental wins, which are good, but we were so far in the hole that we couldn't see the broader landscape outside of it. And so our assumption was like, hey, fast and easy keeps working. It probably will continue to be the thing that keeps performing for us. So surprise, let's see what happens. So we said, hey, can emotional messaging, can something that's kind of deeper than the super functional claim of fast, done, resonate, and can it perform and drive sales, most importantly? I think we said that 10 times in the process. Yes, it can be great, but it needs to drive sales. And so then we partnered with a creative shop and we said, let's explore different ways in. And we took all those wild and crazy ideas that Elise mentioned earlier, things that might have felt a little risky, a little out there, probably weren't going to work. And we put them all down on Post-it notes. We had hundreds and hundreds of Post-it notes. And what you see in this picture is kind of as we started to move into a couple discrete areas that we wanted to test. But nothing was too weird to go on the wall. And so then we took 5 areas, 5 different territories, and everything from fast and easy, which we knew that was kind of our control, to reduces mom guilt, to great for kids, captures real life, kind of what were our unique places. And then we built these into really, really lightweight prototypes. We spent an hour and a half, I think, with our videographer making these using existing assets. We came up with little teeny catchphrases for each one. It was very text heavy. And within an hour and a half, we had 5 unique ads around these territories to put into the machine and see how they performed. And so we evaluated them.
So Rachel, at this point in the process, which messaging territory did you think was going to come out on top?
Yeah, so I definitely, again, fast and easy thought was going to win. But I have to say, I kind of thought the mom guilt area, the to-do list to done list, as we said, which I also thought was a very fun phrase. I thought, oh, that's kind of the most adjacent to fast and easy, right? You have to do this thing, you're going to do this thing. It's still fairly functional, even though it's playing more into different emotional territory. So that's where I thought we might see some more things rise to the surface there.
Yeah, I think that was my hunch as well.
So we ran these and we found that one of these things was a winner, and it really rose to the top across installs, cost per purchase, and it was kid approved photo books. And so ding, 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 ding. It was kind of like this hunch we'd all had, like this feeling inside that, yeah, we saw our own kids playing with our chat books. Our users for years had been telling us that they loved that their kids flipped through their chat books. That was the most common phrase we'd seen up until then. But that was always with our love group, the people who already loved chat books. It wasn't with brand new people who had never heard of us and were coming in the door. And so that was amazing, but also this phrase resonated with the whole broad audience, adults 18 to 54, not just with parents. Like there was something even bigger there. And so it really cemented this hunch that chat books were for kids. These photo books that we loved were for kids, which led us to reimagine everything. How do you reimagine everything from your mission to your product itself, to your user experience, to your marketing, to your advertising, when you have this product that's for kids? And it's such a unique place too, because kids are the end user of this product, but they're not the purchaser. It's mom or dad or their adult in their life who is purchasing this. It's the kid who uses it, but we have to talk to the parent on behalf of the kids. And so we really set out to reimagine everything. And we did that with a couple big ideas. The first was with this kid-friendly as a North Star. What big idea could we have that would serve parents and kids? And it was as simple as the toddler guarantee. And so kids could love as hard as they wanted on the photo book. Parents could feel great about giving the photo books to them, because if it got too roughed up, we would replace it. No questions asked, send you a new one in the mail. And this really unlocked things for parents, because they didn't have to worry and keep things nice up on the shelf. It was, give this to your kid down on the floor. Oh, this is a photo book I just swung by. Give it to your kid down on the floor. Throw it in the diaper bag. Take it with you. Throw it in the car seat. Take your books everywhere your kid goes. We'll replace it. And it really is about photo books that are used. And so then we released a whole ecosystem of ads. And this was the Toddler Guarantee ecosystem. We had statics, we had video, we had interactive units here. There's a really great one where you tap to destroy and you have a clean table, and then the toddler spills the Cheerios. Super fun stuff, and ran this whole entire ecosystem of ads. And the idea was like, come out, try the guarantee, right? You're gonna love it. And if your kid plays with it too hard, we'll replace it. And I'll tell you about how that did in a moment. But we also went even further. We went back to the drawing board and said, hey, yeah, kids love our regular photo books, but what should we design from the very first pixel for kids? And so we designed Monthly Minis, which is a subscription product of kid photo books designed for kids, mini books for mini hands, as we like to say, and they're just $5. They're mess friendly, like they're made to be destroyed, but also they have a nice little gloss that keeps them. And these have been a hit. I grabbed my 3-year-old stack right here. You can see they've been very well loved. I need to get the toddler guarantee here because they're very, they've been eaten and chewed and bent and everything like this, slept with a lot. But they've been a hit. These have been available for just a short while, and over 250,000 of these have been sold and are in kids' hands right now. And that came completely out of this beta typing moment of let's just literally throw this idea up into the ad machine, see how people react with it, and then let's take that big idea and do something with it. And so not only did we create amazing ad creative, have a ton of fun with the new product, the ads performed, which, as I mentioned in the beginning, was the most important thing for us, is these needed to perform and drive great customer acquisition cost. And so we saw they performed on a direct response basis. Hooray. And additionally, they gave us a brand awareness lift, an ad recall lift, and they made more of an impact. So we got kind of like the basic sustenance we wanted and all of this pixie dust on top of it, like brand pixie dust magic. So that is the story of the Toddler Guarantee.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Rachel. I love this example so much. Not just because it worked, but because of what you guys did with the learnings, and that, you turned it into an amazing campaign and also thought through, how do we redesign product and how do we kind of build our business around this insight that this book is, so kid friendly. So I'm curious, how has beta typing changed the way you think about developing creative ideas?
Such a good question, Elise. I think it's changed for any big concept that we want to do, and big or small, but we can test it first. And then we can invest time and money and energy in building it out. Once we kind of get that early signal, and we can do multiple levels of it, right? We can put one idea out, then see what we find, test, iterate, build on it. But it really lets you try wild, crazy, wackier things because you're not tied into doing something big with it in the moment. So we use it throughout the whole business now in many ways.
Amazing. So that's the perfect segue to our final section, which is DIY, beta type it yourself. We're going to share a couple of pointers for how you can apply beta typing to your own brand, kind of through the 4 steps of this process. So, of course, starting with the first step, which is to ask. The hypothesis here can really make or break an experiment. And so we want to make sure that we get that, really clear, that we know exactly what that question is that we're trying to answer. And when it comes to developing that hypothesis, keep the 4 W's in mind. So, first and foremost, think about why you're running this campaign. What is that, key perception or behavior that you're trying to shift? And then who are you trying to drive that change with? Who is your audience? And what do you understand about either what motivates them and kind of drives them toward your brand, or any barriers that are keeping them away from your brand or from your industry? And then think about which KPI you're going to use to track success. Of course, I'm sure your brand is tracking so many metrics across campaigns, but what's that one key metric that's going to, tell you whether or not a particular prototype or a particular, concept is really driving results for your brand? And then the last thing, and potentially most important thing when it comes to actually building your prototypes, is what is that kind of knowledge gap that you're trying to fill in by doing this testing? What is that key variable that you're going to create across all of these assets? Is it which RTB is most compelling? Which strategic territory is going to resonate most with our audience? Or maybe something like which creative concept is going to change brand perceptions? So once you've answered those questions, you should be ready to kind of fully form your hypothesis, and you might end up with something along these lines. An emotional message will drive more app downloads than a promotional message. Or something like gamified ads will drive better DR results when targeting a younger audience. Or a new product positioning will generate higher brand awareness and intent. So as you can see, there are just a million different iterations of this, so many different things that you could test. But once you've got that hypothesis squared away, you're ready to move into the really fun stage of beta typing, which is making your prototypes. And when it comes to thinking about prototypes, I just kind of think of them as like the MVPs for beta typing, not only because they are like the shining star that's carrying the rest of the team, but because they should feel like minimum viable creative products. The whole point of doing beta typing is to put ideas out into the world before you've moved into production. So prototypes aren't going to have the same kind of sheen and polish that you're used to with your traditional campaigns. And that means that you're probably using whatever assets you kind of have around in order to build these. And that might look like existing brand assets such as photography or footage from a previous shoot. You might use stock footage or photography, or maybe even, pull out your phone and do some really light kind of lo-fi shoots just, on campus, whatever kind of expresses the idea in that minimum viable product way. And then when it comes to actually editing those assets, there are a couple of good things to keep in mind. One is that whatever that variable is that you're testing, whether it's strategy or concept or an RTB, that should come in very early. So if you're running static prototypes, then you're pretty much covered. But if you're running anything in a video format, you want to make sure that that variable comes through in the first couple of seconds of each of those videos. The next is that, we want to control for the variable as much as possible. And so you want a lot of consistency across the assets. For example, if one asset has really strong branding, all of the assets should have similar branding. And if one asset is a 10-second story ad, then the other assets should have a similar format and length. And then the final thing to keep in mind, after many, many rounds of beta typing that we've done with a variety of different clients, we have found that assets that are both visually and verbally distinct from one another actually lead to a clearer read on which asset is the best to move forward. So that just means that if you're, running, different concepts, that both the headline and the visual are going to feel just a little bit different across each of those assets. All right, so that brings us to the third stage, which is the learning phase. And this is where you're going to, build the actual testing structure for your prototypes and start to analyze the learnings. So there are so many ways to track success for, a paid campaign that you're running across social media. We tend to use two different experiment designs for this. One is a brand lift pretest, which is a poll-based, measurement system that allows you to take a look at results across the funnel from, brand awareness to favorability to intent. Or you could run an A/B test, which is similar to what we ran with Chatbooks. We had a 5-cell split test, and that allows you to take a look at both mid and lower funnel outcomes like app installs or conversions. And then of course, once you've actually gotten the results and seen, maybe you've got one or two prototypes that are kind of rising to the top in terms of that main KPI that you're looking at, it's also, important to unpack why it is that you're seeing those results and try to, dig a little bit below the surface here. It can also be helpful to look at secondary diagnostics like demographics, and you might find that, one of the assets that didn't even rise to the top was really resonating with a particular group of people. Maybe it reached a different gender than that you're usually talking to, or a different age group, or maybe even a group of people in a particular geographic area. So all of that can be really helpful information when it comes to developing your final big idea, or just helpful insights to kind of set on the shelf and use at a later date for a future campaign. All right, that brings us to the final stage of beta typing. And of course, this is what it's all for. And this is the adapt phase. Of course, all of the signals that we've talked about up to this point are just the beginning, and it's really up to you to use your creative expertise and instincts to decide what to do with those learnings, where to go next. Maybe that's into another round of creative testing. Maybe it's as a launching pad for a big idea. You really can't go wrong at this stage, but if you do move into, big idea development, there's one thing that we would, love for you to keep in mind, which is how do you create real value for your audience? Beta typing presents such a unique opportunity to let people in on the creative process early. So how can you kind of pay that back to them with an idea that goes beyond just talking about brand and product and actually creates real value or provides a real service for people? And again, I think Chatbooks did this perfectly in that, they could have just talked about brand and product, but they took it a step further and created a real service in terms of the Toddler guarantee, and also kind of rethought their products in terms of the monthly minis. So just don't forget who's creating these ideas with you, and try to find ways to kind of put them at the center of your campaign. All right, so that is your quick 20-minute primer on beta typing. Hopefully this has inspired you to take advantage of the real-time feedback you can get from your audience across social media to test your way to big ideas and to co-author creative ideas with the community you're trying to reach. We cannot wait to see what you create. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please feel free to reach out on Instagram. This is how you can get a hold of both of us. We're happy to just connect or to answer any questions you have. But we really appreciate the time that you spent with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.